Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, the Executive Director of the American Constitutional Rights Union and the ACRU Action Fund, as well as the Committee to Support and Defend, the nation's really only constitutional conservative veterans organization. And I just want to first and foremost say thank you to everyone that pulls down and watches our Live Free TV. It's very important that we can get our message to you, talking about some of the major constitutional issues and also a call to action for each and every one of you. And that's where I'd like to start. Last week, this time, I was up on Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., talking to members of the House of Representatives and HAS members, Armed Services Committee members, former colleagues, about the impending National Defense Authorization Act. And I kind of wrote about it, but I think it's really important that we reiterate how critical this piece of legislation is in this bill. And as you know, there really is only one thing that the United States Congress is mandated to do each year, and that is to pass a budget. And what do we mean by pass a budget? That means 12 different appropriations bills. Those are the appropriations bills that oversee the respective governmental agencies of jurisdiction. And so prior to the appropriations process, each one of these jurisdiction committees, such as the Armed Services Committee or some of the other judicial committee that oversees the Department of Justice, well, they're supposed to go through what is called an authorization process, where they look and they have hearings and testimonies from the key leaders in that government agency that they have jurisdiction over. Because remember, it is all about the checks and balances that we have. And the most powerful branch of our three branches of the government is not the executive branch, it's supposed to be the legislative branch. And then the House of Representatives, they have the power of the purse string. And so you get when it comes to the NDAA, you get the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of Joint Chiefs, the service chiefs, the secretariats, being at the Secretary of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, they all come before the Armed Services Committee, and they testify, because it's all about understanding what are the proper roles and missions that are going to be authorized by the Armed Services Committee, and therefore the appropriators can put the money against those authorizations and get that appropriations bill passed. And remember, all 12 are supposed to be passed before the end of the fiscal year, which is 30 September. So we fund the government for the following year, which starts 1 October of 2023 for the fiscal year of 2024. And that's what we're dealing with. And we did get the NDAA passed through the House of Representatives, and I got to tell you something. What you all were able to do, the response, to the call to action of contacting your members of Congress and saying, we don't want all of this leftist ideological agenda to be funded by the taxpayers. They heard you. Because lots of times people will cower under intense pressure. And what it ended up showing in that vote in the House of Representatives on the National Defense Authorization Act, which was 219 to 210, is that this is not a bipartisan bill, which tells you something. There's an incredible dichotomy that is out here when it comes to understanding the defense of the United States of America. Remember, that's one of the primary duties and responsibilities of the federal government, as per the Constitution. It's listed there in the preamble of the Constitution, to provide for the common defense. Either we are going to focus on military readiness or we're going to focus on leftist wokeness. And I think that when you look at 210 members, and there were 4 Republicans that voted against this NDAA, and there were 4 Democrats that voted for it. That is not the overwhelming bipartisan nature that you normally see happen with the National Defense Authorization Act. But the interesting thing is that since this Biden administration has come aboard, we have seen the funding of so many things that are undermining the readiness of the United States military. And I will tell you, first and foremost, when you look at this diversity, equity, and inclusion and this critical race theory, which is really just cultural Marxism, but you cannot have a cohesive fighting force if you are, preaching to one group of individuals because of their skin color that they are bad, and the other group, because of their skin color, they're victims. So you got oppressors and oppressees. Now, how are you going to fight on the battlefield if you have that type of schism that is being created, policies that are promoting that? And so when you think about the money that has gone to fund what I call the new political commissars in our United States military, that's something that we have to get rid of. when you look at all of this focus on, this gender dysphoria and treatments, hormonal therapies, and even talking about having gender mutilation surgeries, not just for these service members suffering from this mental condition, but now talking about subjecting this to the dependent children of service members, even without their consent. That's not part of the mission and duty and responsibility of the United States military. The United States military, first and foremost, is to recruit, to train, to deploy, to fight, to win, and take care of soldier families. That's the bottom line. And when I think about that last thing, when I was a commander, it was so important that you took care of your soldiers' families, or your Marines, sailors, airmen, guardians. I've learned that that's the name that we refer to the Space Force members as. But you're supposed to take care of their families so that the service member can focus on their mission, their duty, their responsibility, their task and purpose. But when you have this current administration completely going off the rails and doing an unconstitutional act, violating the Hyde Amendment, which is what Secretary of Defense Austin did when he issued a memo saying that the federal government, the Department of Defense, would fund service members taking leave. It doesn't account against their normal leave. They get to have paid leave. Then on top of that, they get their travel and all expenses reimbursed if they want to go and murder an unborn baby in the womb. Now, I want you to think about that. We are paying members of our military to go and kill what could be future members of our military. A soldier giving birth to a soldier, a sailor giving birth to a sailor, a Marine giving birth to a Marine, an airman giving birth to an airman, a guardian giving birth to a guardian. As a matter of fact, the Secretary of the Army, Christine Wormuth, just recently came out and said that she does not want to recruit from families that have generations of service to the United States military. How insidious is that? Because really, those are the families that have been sustaining this all volunteer force for quite some time. And that's something that really does directly affect my own family, because our legacy of service is my father in World War II, my older brother in Vietnam, myself for 22 years, my nephew right now as a battalion commander, serving 3 combat tours of duty. My father-in-law, who was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, 24 years in the Army, 2 combat tours of duty in Vietnam. So why would we not want to have generational service, generational patriotism in the United States military? All because I think we're more so focused on this leftist ideology, and they want to get a new blood, a new stream that wants to kowtow to their ideological agenda, which means that we don't, as the Air Force Academy put out, we don't refer to mothers and fathers as mom and dads. We refer to them by some pronoun. We have these, instead of having good quality recruiters that can go out there and recruit these young men and women. And understand, the recruitment pool is shrinking here in the United States of America. First and foremost, I think it's less than 30% are even qualified to join in our military. And then when you talk about that number of less than 30%, then there is a very small number that even want to serve in our military. And so I think we have to get back to, restoring that sense of honor, integrity, and character, and not just in our society, but for those people that want to join the military, and that has to be in our military. When I think about what just recently happened with that picture of a overweight, gender dysphoric, suicidal United States Army major standing up with 2, pride flags, these rainbow flags. That's not the mission of the United States military. And furthermore, I want you to understand that these individuals that are suffering from gender dysphoria, they can ask for an exemption so they don't have to take a physical fitness readiness test. Yes. If you're suffering from gender dysphoria and you're going through these hormonal therapies and treatments and things of this nature, you can get an exemption from being physically fit, physically tested. And guess what that means? That means that you're not capable to deploy. You're not ready. And so why are we having a military where we're allowing people that are not part of the readiness of our military? You can't be overweight and be in the military. That was one of the things that I chapter soldiers out about. You can't even join the military if you have flat feet, asthma, things of this nature. So why are we making this carve out for people that have a mental condition? This all has to do with the leftist ideological agenda. And oh yeah, coming back to this whole thing about funding the murder of unborn babies in the womb through our military, allowing people to go and take leave for that. How many members of the military don't get charged leave if they want to go visit a sick relative? How many members of the military get to come home from a combat zone and see the birth of their child? But yet we won't pay for that. We won't allow that. Well, we will allow people to go and kill future generations of Americans. We're supposed to be all about protecting Americans' lives. That's what the military is all about, our way of life and American lives. But what the Biden administration is saying that it wants members of the military to destroy life, American life. And I think it's so important that we continue to stand and we continue to, send this message to the people up there on Capitol Hill, especially now, since the National Defense Authorization Act goes over to the Senate and the Republicans do not have the majority in the Senate. So you know that the progressive socialist left, who is furious about what has happened in the House of Representatives with the NDAA. How dare those Republicans stand up and say that they're not going to fund our ideological agenda, our woke agenda in the United States military? Well, now we've got to make sure, first and foremost, that those Senate Republicans, they stand and say, we're not going to allow it to happen. And please, if you have the time, send a note to Senator Tommy Tuberville for the stance that he is taking. Because there are some Republicans, to include the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, that are really trying to put pressure on him to get him to back down. What Lloyd Austin did was not correct. He is violating the Hyde Amendment. That's unconstitutional. He cannot write a memo that oversteps rather, and nullifies law that has been passed by the Congress, signed into law by an executive, by the president. So thank Tommy Tuberville for what he is doing, because he has exposed the left. And if the president of the United States of America is saying that he will veto a National Defense Authorization Act that focus more on military readiness than leftist wokeism and wokeness, then we need to encourage Republicans out there, House and Senate, to stand strong, to stand tall, and not back down and not cave like they always seemingly do, like we saw with the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which was nowhere near fiscally responsible. It's going to allow the Biden administration to up our debt another $4 trillion over the next year and a half. You cannot cave on this, because China is watching what is happening. See, when you have the Chief of Naval Operations that testifies before the House Armed Services Committee that the Navy does not have enough amphibious assault craft to get the Marines to the battlefield to do what needs to be done. Well, guess what the number one mission is for the United States Marine Corps? It involves amphibious assault operations. And guess where that capability is going to be severely needed? In the Pacific, against China, where they are building and fortifying islands in the South China Sea, one of the major sea lanes of commerce. The Senkaku Islands, they're trying to take those over away from from Japan. These Scarborough Shoals, they're encroaching upon them, and that is territory that was belonging to the Philippines. So if we do not have a capable and credible maritime force, a capable and credible amphibious assault force, then what is going to happen? And oh, by the way, the Chinese are outpacing our surface warship fleet right now. But it seems that the Navy is more focused on drag queen recruiters. So we have got to stand strong, because China's watching, Russia's watching, Iran is watching, North Korea is watching, the Islamic jihadists are watching. We've got single military age males pouring across our border, coming to this country, to include single military age males coming from China. So we have threats within, not just threats from without. And we've got to make sure that we have a credible deterrent force that will enable us to protect our way of life, our interests, and our allies. And the best way to send that understanding of peace through strength, as Ronald Reagan talked about, having a credible military deterrent, It's what your National Defense Authorization Act says, and therefore the appropriations against it. So continue to call your members of the United States House of Representatives. Continue to call your members of the United States Senate, especially those of us that are Republicans, and tell them to steel their nerve, strengthen their spines, because the left is coming out and saying that, the Republicans are politicizing the National Defense Authorization Act. No, it's because the left, who always seems to project what they're doing on someone else and blame someone else, they have politicized our United States military. They're using our United States military by way of taxpayer funds to advance and promote their ideological agenda. And that cannot be the case. As a matter of fact, we cannot live free if we do not have a credible military that can deter our enemies and has a capability to be able to be on the battlefield, get to the battlefield, like I said, to fight and to win. Too many people have seen this early decision from the Biden administration with what happened in Afghanistan and the continued decimation and degradation of our military. The world knows that we are not meeting our recruitment goals and retention goals of personnel. The world knows that we have shortages of ammunition. The world knows that we are focused more so on another foreign country and their border than our own country and our own border. And as long as these people that are our enemies, especially China, our number one geopolitical foe, they see this gap that they can exploit, they're waiting for the right time to exploit it. And the message that we can send by staying strong with this National Defense Authorization Act, and if need be, saying to Joe Biden, is that if you want to put your ideological leftist woke agenda above the readiness of our United States military, we're not going to fund that. That's where we need Republicans to stand strong and not get the shaking in the boots syndrome, which they seemingly always do. Because the left owns the media. We know that. And the media is going to continue to try to harp on this. But when you stand on the side of everything that is right, that is true, that is constitutional, that is reasonable, that is logical, then why should you cower and why should you back down? So again, I want to applaud everyone here that has been supporting our efforts of the American Constitutional Rights Union to make sure that we focus on military readiness and not leftist wokeness, because this is about our future generations. The left has already shown that they want to murder our future generations, even those that are in the womb of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians. And we cannot allow that to happen. We cannot fund that because that's not the better nature of our angels. So I ask you to continue to support what we're doing. And also to all of you veterans out there that are part of the Committee to Support and Defend, thank you. Thank you for your continued service out of uniform. And as we get ready to launch a new initiative called Live Free Local, we're going to be looking for more of our veterans to run at the local level of governance. Remember, Tip O'Neill said all politics are local. That means city council, school boards, county commission, and sheriffs. We need to have more constitutional sheriffs that are out there. And if you recall, it was about a decade or so ago when I was in Congress, I started a fund called the Guardian Fund. And it was meant to get more military and minority conservatives up there on Capitol Hill. Been incredibly successful. Well, we're going to look and see how we can push that down to have that type of level of support at the local level, city council, school boards, and county commissions and sheriff's races for veterans to get out there and run for office. Because I think it's so important that the oath that you took, you continue to live up to it. And the creed that you took as a soldier, a sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman, Guardian, you still live by that creed and you still seek to serve this great nation. So again, I want to thank you for all that you are doing to support the American Constitutional Rights Union. You can visit us at ACRU.org. Be on the lookout for some of the trips that we're going to be taking, going out to critical key battleground states, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Arizona, Georgia, maybe even going back up on Rocky Top to Tennessee. Because we want to get our word out to you. We want to get our initiatives out to you. We want to see you face to face. And we want to encourage you and to thank you for what you're doing and standing up to preserve this constitutional republic. But I will tell you right now, the 25-meter target is to make sure that we get a National Defense Authorization Act that is passed and signed by this president that focuses on our military readiness and not leftist wokeness. So God bless you all. Thank you and have a great day.